Thrilled for our next guest. 3,149 PIMs. That's a lot. If you're not a fan of the sport, many. That's many. Stanley Cup winning head coach, 17 seasons in the NHL. It's Craig Berube. What's up, man? How we doing?
Hey, good. How are you guys?
Great. Hey, thanks for doing this, man. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So, I saw you the other night doing the TNT broadcast. I was like, flipping around the channels and watching. It was like a Vegas game. And you were sitting in there, and I went, oh, Rui's doing some media. Let's fire this up. Let's get him going. How are you? Like, are you enjoying the media around stuff? I think it's usually hard for guys who are just stepping out of the coaching role, guys who are still very much embedded in the hockey world, to then translate to the spot that you guys hate the most.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, keeps me involved. And, I think just going in there, watching the games with the panel and things like that, it's a different perspective on everything. But I've liked it, to be honest with you. I mean, I think it's been fine. And I've enjoyed doing it. And like I said, it just gives me a little different perspective looking at the game, watching the game, and then talking about it and things like that. So just trying to stay involved and keep busy a little bit.
Do you ever sit though with some of these guys and go, "You idiots! This is the kind of talk that cost me my job." Like the way that you guys talk about this stuff. Okay.
Nothing like that. Nothing that extreme.
Yeah. Did you get any media tips from our mutual friend Mark Savard?
Oh, Savvy.
Yeah.
Not too much. Savvy and I talk once in a while and just kind of keep in touch. We worked together in St. Louis for a bit, and we played together, Savvy and I. So we're pretty good friends, and just seeing I check in, see how he's doing in Calgary and what's going on.
Yeah, no, he was good here because he used to work for our station before you hired him. Actually, that's the job that he went from, was working here doing the Leafs post games, and he was great. It was funny too because all he would do here was criticize the Leafs power play, and then all of a sudden he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna actually go run the power play down there in St. Louis." I was like, "All right, now you got your chance, Savvy. You better be good. You better."
Yeah, he did a good job.
He did.
He did a good job for us. Our power play was really good.
Yeah. I'm sure he never let you know about it.
He's a beauty boy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. He's probably real quiet about the power play stats. I'm sure he's just like never brought it up. He's like, you're like, "Hey, I've noticed the power play is doing well, Savvy." He's like, "Yeah, no, I did it." Okay, so I got to start with this one though. Yesterday, there's a Leafs game, and the story, man, the Flyers, Torts benches his captain, healthy scratches his captain. How did you feel watching that as a coach?
Well, I was at the game, and but that's Torts. That's what he does, and Couturier. His game has slipped lately. I think him missing a year and a half of hockey. I thought, I've been watching the Flyers pretty close here. I'm here, living here, so his game was pretty good for quite some time, and I think it's dropped. In the last month, quite a bit. I think a lot has to do with missing so much time. But Torts, he has everybody in the same, role. Like if you're not playing well, I might sit you out. And I know he was named captain recently, but he sticks to his guns. You got to give him credit for that. And he wanted to sit Couturier out yesterday, and the team went out, and I thought the team played pretty well. I mean, I thought they were the better team for two periods, but, Toronto scored a couple goals in the third, but they ended up winning the game. So I think, he's just trying to, try to fire up Couturier any way he can, but, he's going to sit a game and see what happens next game, whether he's back in or not.
How difficult, though, you think that balance is in the room, right? Because he's your captain for a reason, and so the other guy's got to sort of be looking around and going, "Oof, okay." And my one thought was, you mentioned it with the third period, is Toronto almost comes back, and there's a ton of posts, and if you lose that game, if you're Philly, and you're going, well, who probably would have been on the ice in a lot of those defensive situations is your defensive playing captain, right? Like, they kind of escaped with one, no?
Well, there's all kinds of things that could pop up, right? A win-loss. Listen, I don't think anybody in the room, including Torts wants to sit the captain on. But that's just the way he does things. So, and I think the team understands that. I really do.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't see any letdown from their team right from the get-go in the game. They're playing their normal game. I know there was a lot of posts hit in the game by the Leafs. The Leafs, obviously they got some high-end skill guys that, didn't finish last night. That's basically what it boils down to.
Mm-hmm. You know what, though? This is kind of... Do you think it's harder in the modern day? Because we see this stuff, and yes, it's rare to see a captain scratch. I don't think that this is like an any era thing. But when you're, and you would probably relate to this as someone who has more of a reputation of being like a hard-nosed guy. That was the way you were as a player, and hey, you're a no-nonsense type of dude. Getting guys in this era to buy into what you're doing when you're trying to set a culture like that. Because the coaches of that vintage who do things like Tortorella, it's evaporating, right? Or it's shrinking. It's not going away entirely.
It's a fine line.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be a fine line, and I think that, whatever team you take over and things like that, it's real important to get the leadership group set on your team and your leaders and understand that this is the way I'm going to do things, and you got to make sure that everybody understands that in the room. After I'm done, you got to take over in that room. You got to make sure things are, going in the right direction, that they're not complaining after I leave the room and, about the way I do things. It's your job as leaders to make sure that, hey, shut your mouth. This is the way things are done here, and this is what we're going to do. And your leaders have to lead by example and make sure that they're extending your right arm in that dressing room, whether it's in the room, on the ice, whatever, and take care of a lot of that stuff. That's really important. And if you don't have that, then it becomes real difficult.
Yeah. I think that's always, it's like that's like any industry, right? You can try to set the tone, but if you don't have other leaders around you, it's going to be difficult to execute. Yeah,
for sure. And like, it's more work for the leaders, but that's what, leaders are. They got to do more. And that's why they got the C and the A's on their jerseys. And, it's one thing to play well as a leader, but your job's not done. There's other things you got to take care of and do in the locker room and things like that. So that's a big part of it, in my opinion.
Yeah. You know what, though? In my experience, and again, different industries, but in my experience with leaders, like when you talk about, hey, there's going to be more on their shoulders, usually they establish themselves or they present themselves as leaders because they would have wanted it anyways, like they were looking for it in the first place.
Yes, for sure. And I think it's really important when you're picking leaders and people on your team, whatever, in your jobs and all that stuff, that, you're picking the right guys and they understand that there's more to it than just playing the game. There's other things you got to make sure that you're doing and taking care of your teammates. And, there's a lot that goes into it. So,
you're at that game yesterday and you're watching the Leafs. So you get to see them up close and personal. And maybe this is too much of a media question, but when you're watching them, and again, they're missing a couple of key guys, Marner specifically, but do they feel like a team when you're watching them that has an identity as we're heading into the final month of the season?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's an unfair question because I haven't watched them that much, that closely. I see them play games, obviously, when I'm watching on TV and things like that, but last night I didn't feel like they played, any kind of an identity game. I thought, the game was a little bit sloppy, in my opinion, with the passing and the execution and things like that. But listen, they got, Marner was missing last night, but they got some high-end players that can really, do a good job. Their power play is dangerous, and they're an offensive team. That's the way I look at them. Like, they score goals, and that's the way they try to win hockey games. There's obviously parts of the game where they got to be better at, and they know that, and they're trying to get there before playoffs. So there's a lot of teams like that they're trying to shore some things up in their game going into playoffs, so they're ready to roll. We all know in playoffs that if you don't play good defense and you're not checking hard in the playoffs and you're not playing a straight north game and doing all the little things right, you could be out pretty quickly.
Well, actually, maybe we'll put it that way. Is there something, you said you don't watch them every single night, but is there something when you do watch them, for example, and you said it, last night was a sloppy game and we're in the dog days, and so it's tough to get a complete picture. But is there something about them that whenever you watch, you like keeps coming back that you think about? Like, is there a question about them or a thought that you have or an observation about them that you feel like is consistent each time?
I don't know. Again, that's a tough question for me, guys. I really, I can't. It's hard for me to comment on them because I don't see them enough. It really is. I don't want to make an unfair comment. They're a good team. Listen, they got, like I said, they got some real good players. I think their goaltending's been a lot better. Doing things, but again, I'll go back to it. Going into the playoffs, if you don't play direct and north in the playoffs, and you're not dialed in defensively, it's an early exit.
Okay, so this is one that I'm having a tough time with too. Is or where I empathize with them. Year over year, they're kind of sitting in this playoff format where the regular season games don't matter. Not don't matter completely, but overall, with their standing, their positioning, they're basically going from February through April without a ton of stakes. And, with you guys, everyone sort of pointed to, your team in 2019, hey, they need to win all these games. They need to win all these games to get in the postseason. They need to turn their season around. So you get guys to buy in. But how did you do that? Because, your guys were 23-6-4 from February, in February, March, and April combined. I was looking it up in 2019. And again, obviously you had the winning component to get into the playoffs. But how do you get your team to stay focused and remain bought in during a time that even for most teams is considered the dog days?
Yeah, well, I think we did have to win a lot of games going forward. We were playing pretty good hockey in December too. We just weren't getting the wins. I think we were missing a goalie, and obviously Binnington came in and did a real good job. So we had a real good 1-2 combination with Jake Allen and net. And that was really important. But, I think for the most part, from that time on, they accepted their roles. They knew how we were playing the game. It was, it's a simple North game we played. We checked hard, and, we really had a good camaraderie in our room, and our players, really liked each other, enjoyed being around each other. And they played for each other. I think that was a message that we finally got across to our players. Listen, it's about the team. It's not about individuals. It's about the team, and it's about the success of the team. And I think, we're 4 lines. We rolled 4 lines in 6D. That's the way we were built, our team. And, that's why we had great success. And it never stopped. It's like we'd lose a game, but we're right back at it the next game. We're playing at a high level again. And that's the key. You got to move on from losses. And I think going into the playoffs, we did that. And in the playoffs, you're going to lose games, obviously, but you have to move on from it. You learn from your mistakes in that game, and then you're right back at it the next game. And we did a very good job of that in the playoffs. I don't know if we lost 2 in a row in the playoffs. I mean, we obviously lost games. The series were all pretty deep, six games, 7 games on all of them. So we're very good at turning the page and getting ready to play the next game.
Yeah. Well, and you guys will always be a popular team here because you beat the Bruins. So thank God. There's always going to be that underlying gratitude that comes from this market. What is wild too about you is I always think is you're now the proof of concept coach for, hey, if another team wants to make a pivot and change directions and bring in the new voice or bring in the new guy in season to try to make that run, you're the kind of the face of that. And I'm curious if, you don't need to name teams obviously, but did teams gauge your interest this year? Like what has your level of communication been with some of these other clubs that have, looked at their situations at head coach during the season? How has that gone for you so far?
Yeah, not a lot, to be honest with you. I think, that'll happen after the season. I think a lot of these teams that made changes, they brought in interim coaches, whether assistants and things like that. And that was the direction they went. And so, So there hasn't been a lot of contact with me because, they're still in the season and they're playing and they're focused on their stuff there. So, I'm sure things after the season ends, there'll be contact with teams and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Was there ever a point in the year where you thought maybe I should scout the Leafs a little bit more?
I watch a lot of hockey. Yeah. I watch a lot of teams. I do. I mean, I think, like I said, I don't look at it that way. I really don't.
Yeah.
These teams are playing. They have their coaches. Boom, that's great. It's a tough job coaching, and there's a lot of changeover in coaches. We know that it's a tough gig, but it's what we signed up for. And I had a great run in St. Louis, and I was let go. It was time to move on, and that's what I did. So I don't look at it like, oh, what job can I have? You know what I mean?
Of course.
I'm just patient. I've enjoyed my time at home with my family, doing some TV work and things like that, and try to get to some games in my area here to watch, live, and then just trying to stay focused watching hockey on TV.
Again, like you did end up having a full camp with the Blues because you went from the interim tag to the actual coach. But your next opportunity, this is a weird way to say it, but are you actually kind of grateful that your next stop might be one where when you start with the team, it would be with the full camp rather than starting on the fly, even though you were there?
Yeah, I think, whatever happens here, and I think the summertime is important too, with, setting goals and things like that with your players and the organization of what you want your team to look like and what you want to see. And then obviously training camp's important, getting a good camp in and, kind of developing and creating a culture that you want going forward here starting in training camp. I think you can really build a good foundation in camp and what you want your team to look like and what you expect out of your players night in and night out on the ice, obviously off the ice too. And I think that's a good opportunity for a coach rather than just stepping in the middle of the year, not knowing a lot and just trying to figure things out.
So it's never easy to close an interview on a question like this. And I'm sorry for your loss. You lost a former teammate yesterday, and Chris Simon. He passed away at age 52.
Yeah.
I wondered, if you'd share a thought with our audience of what that guy was like, what it was like playing with him, and maybe, some of the thoughts that you had yesterday after hearing about the tragic news.
I'm still sad, and Cy was a great he I played with Cy and Wash for a few years. Actually, Cy and I were teammates in Philly too for a bit. But he got traded to Quebec with that big deal, pretty young. But Cy was a guy that him and I had similar roles on the team, but he'd score goals too. Cy was a pretty good hockey player. He could score goals and had some good hands around the net and things like that. But I remember Simon, myself, and Dale Hunter were a line. They formed this line going into the playoffs, and then we were aligned together throughout the playoffs. We went to the Stanley Cup Finals. So, it was just great having him on my line as a teammate. And like I said, he was a great person and great guy. And we shared a lot of time together. It's just saddened for his family and everybody, and just what happened. I feel awful.
Yeah, I will say too. Yeah, like yesterday, just looking through his hockey reference pages and the years that you two played together. You're right. Everyone does remember him as one of the scariest guys in the league, one of the most intimidating guys in the league for a stretch. But his season Washington in 2000, he had 29 goals. Like when 29 goals meant more than 29 goals. You know what I'm saying? Like now,
he could score goals.
Yeah.
He had a good shot, and obviously his size and everything, and he had good hands. He'll be missed. He's, again, tremendous person, and he was a good hockey player.
Hey, Craig, again, really appreciate you making time, especially today. And again, sorry for your loss, but I really appreciate you joining the show and having a chat with me today.
Okay, thanks for having me on. Take care, man.